Alright, I never thought I'd be the kind of guy posting here, but I just need to get this out. Maybe someone will have some advice, or maybe I just need to hear from strangers that I'm not crazy. My name's Ted. I'm 33, and up until recently, I thought I had the perfect marriage. Jessica and I have been together since high school. You know those couples that everybody says are made for each other? That was us. We had our plans, our future, our struggles, but we were in it together. At least, that's what I thought. I work as a mechanical technician, nothing glamorous, but I've always been proud of what I do. Jessica, though? She had bigger dreams. She wanted to be a lawyer, and I backed her all the way. We didn't have much, but I worked extra hours, took on every side job I could find, just so she could focus on school. I remember coming home exhausted, hands covered in grease, only to sit down and quiz her for exams. We had late-night ramen dinners, laughed about how broke we were, and promised each other that one day, it would all be worth it. And it was worth it, for a while. Jessica graduated, got a job at a top firm, and suddenly, life was supposed to get easier. I thought finally we can breathe. But that's not what happened. At first, she was just busy, long hours, late nights, bringing work home. I understood. New job, new responsibilities. But over time, something changed. She wasn't just busy, she was distant. The woman who used to fall asleep on my shoulder watching bad TV now barely looked at me. Dinners became silent, weekends were spent apart, and every time I tried to talk about it, she'd brush me off. It's just work, Ted. You wouldn't understand. And maybe I didn't. Maybe I was just the dumb mechanic who couldn't grasp the high-stakes world of corporate law. But I knew something was wrong. And then, a few weeks ago, I found out just how wrong I was. You ever have a moment where your whole world just stops? Like 1 second, everything's moving, and the next, it's like someone hit pause on your entire life? That's what happened to me the night I found out. Jessica had been working late a lot. No big deal, right? That was normal now. She always had some big case, some urgent deadline, some client she just had to impress. I tried to be supportive, but deep down, something didn't sit right. She wasn't just working late, she was avoiding me. Then one evening, I swung by her office. Not planned or anything, I just figured I'd surprise her. Maybe bring her some food since she always forgot to eat during those long nights. Thought maybe she'd smile, maybe we'd talk, maybe things would feel normal again, just for a little while. I got to the building, made my way up, and right as I was about to knock on her office door, I saw it. The door was cracked open just enough for me to see inside. And there she was. Jessica. My wife. Sitting on her desk, leaning in close to some guy in a suit. And then, just like in some awful movie, she reached for his tie, pulled him in, and kissed him. I just stood there. Frozen. My brain couldn't catch up to what my eyes were seeing. This was Jessica. The woman who used to cry happy tears when I fixed her old car. The woman who promised me we'd build our future together. And now, here she was, kissing some dude in her office like our marriage was nothing. I didn't barge in. Didn't yell. Didn't make a scene. I just walked away. Before I left, I did one thing. I took off my wedding ring, placed it on her desk right outside the door, and grabbed a sticky note from reception. I wrote 3 words. I saw everything. Then I walked out of that building and out of her life. At least, that's what I wanted to do. But life's never that simple, is it? I don't even remember leaving the building. 1 second, I was watching my wife pull some guy in by his tie, and the next I was outside, standing in the cold night air, my whole body numb. I kept telling myself to do something. Burst in, yell, demand an answer, anything. But I didn't. I just stood there like an idiot, feeling my stomach twist until I thought I'd be sick. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely pull off my wedding ring, but I did. I placed it right outside her office door on the desk where the receptionist used to sit. Then I grabbed a sticky note and wrote 3 words. I saw everything. No dramatic speech. No confrontation. Just those words. And then I left. I don't even remember the drive home. I must have gone on autopilot because the next thing I knew, I was parked in our driveway, staring at the house we had built together. The house we used to sit in and dream about the future. Now, it just looked empty. I couldn't go inside. Not after what I'd just seen. So I did the only thing I could. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to Mark's number, and called. He picked up on the second ring. "Yo Ted, what's up?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out at first. How do you even say something like this? After a long pause, I finally muttered, "Can I crash at your place?" Mark knew me well enough not to ask questions. "Yeah man. Doors open." When I got there, he took one look at me and frowned. "Dude, you look like you've seen a ghost." I wanted to tell him, but I couldn't. Not yet. The words just wouldn't come. So instead, I just sat down on his couch, staring at the floor. Mark didn't push. He just handed me a beer and sat next to me in silence. Hours passed. At some point, he must have dozed off, but I didn't. I just kept replaying it in my head, over and over. Jessica. The way she smiled at him. The way she leaned in. The way she kissed him like she meant it. My hands clenched into fists. I had worked so hard to give her everything, to make her life easier, to support her through school while I broke my back working extra shifts. I did everything right. And this is what I got. By the time the sun started creeping through the window, I knew one thing for sure. I was done. By the next morning, my phone was blowing up. Jessica had called 8 times and left more texts than I cared to count. "Ted, where are you? Please call me. We need to talk. This isn't what you think. Please, baby, just come home. I love you. Don't do this to us." I didn't answer. Instead, I got up, grabbed another beer from Mark's fridge. Yeah, I know morning drinking isn't a great sign, but I needed something to take the edge off. I sat there, rereading her messages, trying to figure out what kind of lie she'd spin. This isn't what you think? I literally saw her pulling some dude into her office. What was I supposed to think? Mark walked in, rubbing his eyes. "She Callan?" I nodded, showing him the screen. He whistled. "You gonna talk to her?" I shrugged. "I don't know." But I should have known Jessica wouldn't wait for me to decide. An hour later, there was a knock at the door. Mark shot me a look. "You want me to handle it?" I sighed. "No. I got it." I opened the door, and there she was, Jessica, standing on the porch, looking like a complete mess. Her hair was in a loose bun, her makeup smudged from crying, and she was still wearing the same clothes from last night. "Ted," she breathed out, eyes searching mine like she was expecting me to just break down and forgive her on the spot. I leaned against the doorframe. "What do you want, Jessica?" She reached for my hand, but I pulled back. That seemed to break something in her because fresh tears welled up in her eyes. "Can we talk? Please." I stepped outside, shutting the door behind me. "Talk." She wiped at her face. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything." I almost laughed. "A mistake? A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill. This was a choice." She shook her head frantically. "No, Ted, it wasn't like that. I was stressed, I wasn't thinking straight, and it just happened." I cut in. "You accidentally pulled some guy into your office? Accidentally kissed him?" She swallowed hard. "I didn't sleep with him." "Oh, congratulations," I snapped. "You only cheated a little. I feel so much better now." She flinched like I'd hit her. "Ted, please, I love you. I swear, I never wanted to hurt you." I crossed my arms. "Then why did you?" She had no answer for that. After a long silence, she whispered, "I don't want to lose you." I stared at her, the woman I had sacrificed so much for, the woman I thought I'd spend my whole life with, and all I felt was exhaustion. "You already did," I said. I turned and walked back inside, leaving her standing there, crying on the porch. That night, I filed for divorce. Filing for divorce should have been the end of it. I should have been able to walk away, let her deal with the mess she made, and start picking up the pieces of my own life. But Jessica wasn't done yet. The texts kept coming, but now they were different. At first, it was more of the same: apologies, promises, please just talk to me messages. When I kept ignoring her, the tone shifted. Suddenly, she wasn't just begging, she was justifying. "Ted, I was lonely. You were always working, always tired. I needed someone to talk to. I never planned for this to happen. It was just a moment of weakness. You pushed me away, Ted. I didn't feel like you loved me anymore. Oh, so now it was my fault? Now, after years of working extra hours, paying for her tuition, supporting her through everything, I was the one who neglected her? The sheer audacity of it made my blood boil. But it didn't stop at just texting me. No, Jessica knew how to manipulate people. She started working on my family. My mom called me one night, hesitant, like she was stepping on glass. Teddy, honey. I talked to Jessica. She's devastated. She keeps saying it was just a mistake. I nearly dropped my phone. You talked to her? She called me, sweetie. She's really torn up about this. Are you sure divorce is the right thing? Maybe you two just need to work through it. I let out a bitter laugh. Mom, she cheated on me. I know, she said quickly. But marriages go through rough patches. People make mistakes. Mom, stop, I cut her off. A mistake is spilling coffee on my shirt. Cheating is a choice. And I'm not going to stay married to someone who made that choice. She sighed. I just don't want you to do something you'll regret. The only thing I regret, I said, voice tight with anger, is thinking Jessica was someone worth sacrificing for. I could tell she still wasn't convinced, but she let it go. For now. Jessica, though? She was just getting started. Next, she went to our mutual friends. I found out later that she had been spinning the story that I was the one who had emotionally checked out. That I had grown distant and stopped making her feel loved. That she had been so lost and so stressed and so alone, and in a moment of weakness, she accidentally got too close to a coworker. People started texting me weird things. Some sympathetic, some just outright insulting. Man, can't believe you won't even hear her out. Maybe if you'd been more present, this wouldn't have happened. She's sorry, dude. Why throw it all away over one mistake? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Were people actually buying this garbage? Did they really think I was supposed to just accept this and move on? But the worst part? She wasn't done. Not even close. I should have known Jessica wouldn't accept defeat. The crying, the pleading, the excuses, those were just her warm-up. When she realized I wasn't coming back, she changed her strategy completely. First, she tried to guilt-trip me. Her messages turned into long emotional paragraphs about how she couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, how she missed me so much it physically hurt. She said she kept replaying everything over and over, hating herself for what she did. She swore up and down that she would never do anything like that again, that she had made the biggest mistake of her life. But it was always the same line. It was just one mistake, Ted. Just one stupid, meaningless moment. We can fix this. Every time I read those words, my stomach twisted with anger. One meaningless moment? Was it meaningless when she pulled that guy into her office? Was it meaningless when she kissed him like she used to kiss me? Because let me tell you, nothing about the way she leaned into him looked meaningless. I ignored her. But that only made things worse. She started showing up. At Mark's house. At my job. Even at my mom's place. She wasn't yelling or making a scene. No, Jessica was smarter than that. She would wait until she knew I was around, then act completely broken, like a grieving widow. She'd show up with puffy eyes, barely speaking above a whisper, telling people she was just trying to make things right. That she needed to see me. That she couldn't live with herself if she didn't at least try. People started looking at me like I was the bad guy. Like I was cruel for ignoring her. Like I was heartless for walking away from a woman who was so deeply sorry. Then she did something that made my blood run cold. One day, I got a call from my boss. Hey Ted, everything okay at home? I frowned. Why? Well, your wife came by. I felt a headache coming on. What did she say? He hesitated. She just wanted to talk about you. Said she was worried. Said you were acting out of character. I gripped the phone tighter. And what did that mean? She hinted that you might be making impulsive decisions. That maybe your work performance could suffer because of it. Nothing direct, just enough to plant the idea. I could not believe this. Jessica wasn't just playing the victim. She was trying to make me look unstable. She knew how much I valued my job, and she was trying to shake me. To get me to meet her, talk to her, maybe even second-guess myself. She was trying to control the narrative. That's when I realized what she was really doing. Jessica had always been smart. She knew how to play people, how to make them feel for her. And now that she couldn't manipulate me, she was going after everyone around me. She wanted to make sure that if I wasn't going to take her back, I'd at least be miserable without her. That I'd lose my friends, my support, my peace of mind. It wasn't enough for her to say sorry. She needed to make sure that I was the bad guy for not forgiving her. That night, Mark and I sat on his couch, drinking in silence. He finally looked over at me and said, "Dude, you gotta do something. She's not gonna stop." I exhaled, rubbing my temples. Yeah, I know. I had played it quiet up until now, hoping she'd just let go. But Jessica wanted a war. And if that's what she wanted, then that's what she was gonna get. If Jessica wanted to play games, she picked the wrong guy to mess with. I had spent years keeping my head down, working my ass off, doing everything the right way. I didn't drink too much, didn't slack off, didn't cheat, and I sure as hell didn't lie. But Jessica? She had no problem twisting the truth, planting ideas, and making herself look like the victim. Well, if she thought she could bury me under her guilt trip and manipulation, she was about to learn a hard lesson. First, I went straight to my boss. No waiting, no hesitating. I walked into his office and said, "I heard my soon-to-be ex-wife came by." He looked uncomfortable. "Yeah. Listen, Ted, I didn't take her seriously, but I had to ask." I cut him off. "She cheated on me. I caught her. She's trying to cover her own ass by making me look like the unstable one." His face changed immediately. "She what?" "Yeah," I said, folding my arms. "She's showing up at my friends' places, my family's house here, trying to spin the story so people feel sorry for her. I wanted to tell you straight so you know what's really going on." He let out a low whistle. "Damn. What a mess." "Yeah," I agreed. "But it's her mess. Not mine." That shut down whatever seed she was trying to plant at work. Next, I went to my mom's. I could already tell she was torn. Jessica had been working on her hard. Probably crying to her over the phone, telling her how much she regretted everything. I could see the doubt in her eyes when she sat me down at the kitchen table. "She loves you, Teddy," she said softly. "She just made a mistake." I leaned forward. "Mom, do you remember when Dad caught Uncle Rick cheating on Aunt Lisa? What did he say?" Her face hardened instantly. "That cheating is a choice." I nodded. "Then why are we pretending Jessica's different?" She hesitated. Because I've known her for so long. She's family." "No, she's not," I said, my voice firm. "She stopped being family the moment she made that choice. You know that." She let out a deep sigh. "I just don't want to see you throw away your marriage." "She threw it away," I corrected. "I'm just taking out the trash." That got through to her. The next time Jessica called, Mom shut her down. Then I tackled our mutual friends. I started answering the texts, the ones accusing me of not giving her a chance, of being too cold. I kept it simple. She cheated. I caught her. I'm done. Some people tried to argue. I didn't engage. I just repeated myself. She cheated. I caught her. I'm done. One by one, people stopped pushing. I think deep down they knew. They just didn't want to believe it because Jessica had always been good at making people believe what she wanted them to. But the real kicker? The thing that made Jessica's whole fake victim act collapse? I sent her one text. Just one. "Tell everyone the truth, or I will." And just like that, the crying stopped. The desperate texts vanished. No more showing up at my job, no more knocking on doors. Because she knew, if I laid everything out, if I exposed her for exactly who she was, her whole reputation would shatter. Jessica could play the victim all she wanted, but at the end of the day, I had the truth on my side. And she was terrified of it. For a while, things got quiet. Too quiet. No more texts, no more phone calls, no more poor me stories making the rounds. Jessica had backed off. At least, that's what I thought. Then, out of nowhere, I got a message from an old mutual friend, Sarah. She and Jessica had been close, but not best friend close. I hadn't heard from her in months, so I knew something was up. Sarah, hey, I just thought you should know. Jessica's telling people that you were emotionally abusive. I read the message twice, my whole body going still. Me, excuse me? Sarah, she told a few people that you pushed her away for years. That you didn't show her love. That you made her feel so unwanted that she didn't even know if she was in a real marriage anymore. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Jessica was still trying to rewrite history. After everything, after getting caught, after failing to win me back, she wasn't done. She wasn't just trying to look innocent, she was trying to make me the villain. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Me, who exactly is she telling this to? Sarah hesitated. Sarah, a few people from her work. Some of our old friends. Nothing public, but it's getting around. So that was her new angle. If she couldn't get me to take her back, she'd make sure that when people thought about our marriage, they wouldn't see a guy who got betrayed. They'd see a guy who deserved it. I wasn't going to let that happen. I thanked Sarah for the heads up and got to work. I wasn't the type to start drama, but if Jessica wanted to spread lies, I was going to shut it down before it spread any further. I made a group chat with the people she had been talking to, mutual friends, co-workers, anyone I knew she had spoken to. Then I sent one single message. Jessica is telling people I was emotionally abusive. This is a lie. I worked extra shifts to support her through school, did everything I could to make her life easier, and in return, she cheated on me. I caught her in the act. I left her. Now, instead of owning up to it, she's trying to rewrite the story. If anyone wants proof, I still have the messages. No emotion. No anger. Just facts. I knew Jessica would see it. I wanted her to see it. And I didn't have to wait long for the fallout. The next morning, she texted me. Jessica, you didn't have to do that. Me, you didn't have to cheat. She didn't reply. An hour later, Sarah messaged me again. Sarah, she's freaking out. People are calling her out now. She's trying to backpedal, saying she misspoke and didn't mean it like that. Right. Because it's easy to misspeak when you're accusing your ex-husband of being an abuser. I felt a weight lift off my chest. She had tried to turn people against me, but it had backfired. Hard. Nobody likes being lied to, and once people saw the truth, they started distancing themselves from her. Her perfect little story? It was crumbling. Jessica had played her last card. And she lost. After I shut down Jessica's lies, I expected some kind of retaliation. Maybe more guilt-tripping, maybe another round of crocodile tears. But instead, she went silent. Completely. At first, I thought she was just regrouping, coming up with another way to spin the story. But then, Sarah sent me another update. Sarah, she's not handling this well. People at work found out. I frowned at my phone. Me, what do you mean? Sarah, her boss pulled her into a meeting. Apparently, someone told him about what she was saying about you, and now they're questioning her character. It's not looking good. That caught me off guard. I never intended for this to reach her job. I just wanted people to know the truth. But I should have known, Jessica had built her entire professional image on being sharp, smart, and honest. Once people realized she wasn't any of those things, the cracks started showing. I wasn't celebrating, but I won't lie, I didn't feel bad either. Actions have consequences, and she was finally facing hers. Then came the next part. Sarah, also, she and that guy? Over. I sat up. Me, the one from her office? Sarah, yep. Guess he didn't sign up for all the drama. Someone at work confronted him about it, and he panicked. Said it was barely anything, and that he had no idea she was still married when it happened. I let out a low whistle. So he jumped ship the moment things got messy. Typical. Jessica had wrecked our marriage for this guy, and he couldn't even stand by her when people started asking questions. I wondered if she finally understood just how badly she had screwed up. But that wasn't the last bombshell. Sarah, she's moving out of your house. That one made me pause. Me, already? Sarah, yeah. She told a few people she can't stand being there anymore. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling. That house. We had picked everything together. The furniture, the paint colors, even the stupid little decorations she insisted on buying. And now? Now she couldn't even stand to live there. Good. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even relieved. I just felt done. She had spent so much time trying to manipulate me, trying to make me look like the bad guy, but in the end, the truth caught up to her. Now, she had to deal with the wreckage. And for the first time in a long time, that was her problem. Not mine. Jessica moving out should have been the last chapter in this mess. I should have been able to breathe, focus on moving on, and leave her in the past where she belonged. But if I had learned anything, it was that Jessica never let things go easily. Sarah kept me updated, but I didn't even have to ask. Word about Jessica's downfall was spreading on its own. The same people who had defended her, who had called me cold for not giving her a second chance, were suddenly silent. Some even reached out, trying to casually slide into my messages like they hadn't been doubting me a week ago. Ted man, I just want you to know. I had no idea how bad it really was. Oh bro, if I had known she was making stuff up, I never would have taken her side. Right. Because calling me emotionally distant, and suggesting I deserved to be cheated on was just an accident, huh? I didn't bother responding to most of them. The way I saw it, if you had to wait until the whole world turned against Jessica to realize she was a liar, you were never really my friend in the first place. But what really surprised me? Jessica tried to talk to me again. It started with small things. Random texts like, Jessica, hey, I left some stuff at the house. Can I come by and get it? I ignored it. She had moved out already. If she left something behind, it was either in the trash or not my problem. Then came the more desperate ones. Jessica, Ted, please, can we just talk? Just once? No, we couldn't. Then one evening, I got a knock at my door. I knew before I even opened it who it was. Jessica stood there, looking worse than I had ever seen her. She wasn't wearing makeup, her hair was in a messy ponytail, and her clothes were wrinkled like she had slept in them. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. What do you want? She swallowed, looking up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Can we talk? I didn't answer. I just waited. Jessica took that as permission to continue. I don't know what to do anymore, she said, voice shaking. Everything's falling apart, Ted. I raised an eyebrow. That tends to happen when you burn your life to the ground. Her lip trembled. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I let out a dry laugh. That's the problem, Jessica. You never mean for anything to happen. You just do whatever you want and expect the rest of us to clean up the mess. She wiped at her eyes. I miss you. I didn't say anything. I know I can't fix what I did, she continued, her voice breaking. I know I can't take it back. But, don't you ever miss us? I sighed, looking away for a moment before meeting her gaze. I miss who I thought you were. She winced like I had slapped her. I exhaled, shaking my head. Jessica, you didn't just cheat. You lied about it. You tried to make me look crazy. You told people I was abusive. Do you even realize how messed up that is? She squeezed her eyes shut. I was scared, she whispered. No, I said firmly. You were selfish. Silence hung between us. Finally, she whispered, I don't know who I am without you. I looked at her, really looked at her. This wasn't the woman I had fallen in love with. That woman had died the moment she pulled another man into her arms. I shook my head. That's not my problem anymore. She sobbed, covering her face with her hands. But I didn't comfort her. I didn't reach for her. I just stood there waiting. When she finally looked up, her face was full of desperate hope. Is there any chance that one day we could? No. My voice was calm, steady. We're done, Jessica. She nodded slowly, like she had been expecting it but still couldn't believe it. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away. I watched her go, waiting for the familiar ache, the longing, the regret. But it never came. Instead, all I felt was relief. Jessica was finally gone. And for the first time in years, I was free. The days after Jessica's final visit were some of the strangest of my life. I kept waiting to feel something, anger, sadness, anything. But instead, I just felt lighter. Like someone had lifted a weight off my shoulders I didn't even realize I had been carrying. For the first time in years, I wasn't waking up to stress. I wasn't trying to figure out how to fix a broken marriage, how to support someone who never appreciated it, or how to navigate a relationship that had become nothing but tension and silence. I was finally done. At first, it felt weird. I had been with Jessica for so long that being without her almost felt unnatural. Not in the way that I missed her, but in the way that I had spent so many years shaping my life around us. Now there was no us. It was just me. And honestly, I liked it. I started filling my time with things I had put on the back burner for years. I worked on my truck, something I had always meant to do but never had time for. I picked up extra shifts because I wanted to, not because I was supporting someone else's dream. I even reconnected with old friends I hadn't seen in years because Jessica had always been too busy to go out, and I had been too busy trying to keep our relationship alive. It was like I was rediscovering who I was outside of being Jessica's husband. And I realized I had lost a lot of myself in that relationship. One night, Mark and I were sitting on his back porch, drinking beers like we used to when we were younger. He leaned back in his chair, watching me carefully. "You seem different," he said after a while. I raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" He took a sip of his beer. "Lighter. Like you're not carrying the weight of the world on your back anymore." I thought about that for a second. Then I shrugged. Maybe I was. Mark nodded. "Guess that's what happens when you stop trying to fix something that's already broken." That hit me harder than I expected. Because he was right, I had spent so long trying to keep my marriage from falling apart that I never realized it was already in pieces. And now that I wasn't wasting my time on that anymore, I was actually happy. And that's when it hit me, Jessica had never been my happiness. She had been my responsibility. Now, I didn't have to be responsible for her anymore. And it felt damn good. For the first time in years, I had control over my own life. No more walking on eggshells. No more worrying about Jessica's late nights or waiting up for a wife who barely looked at me anymore. No more exhausting fights that went nowhere. At first, the silence felt strange. I wasn't used to coming home to an empty house. No Jessica pacing around, talking about work. No tension thick in the air when she avoided looking at me. But after a while, that silence became peace. I stopped checking my phone for texts I didn't want to read. I stopped expecting to hear her key in the door. I started sleeping better, eating better, feeling better. It took me a while to realize how much of myself I had lost in that marriage. Jessica had always been the priority. Her career, her stress, her needs. I had revolved my life around making hers easier. And the moment I wasn't needed anymore, the moment I had done my part and she had everything she wanted, she threw me away like I was nothing. That realization should have made me bitter. But it didn't. It made me grateful. Because now, for the first time in a long time, I was making decisions based on what I wanted. Mark and I started hanging out more, and through him, I reconnected with people I hadn't talked to in years. I didn't realize how much I had pulled away from everyone until I started seeing them again. One night, we were at a bar, sitting at a booth with a few of Mark's friends. I had a beer in hand, laughing at some dumb joke someone made, when I caught a woman watching me from the other side of the room. She wasn't obvious about it, but every time I glanced over, she was looking. I hadn't thought about dating, not even a little. The idea of another relationship, another commitment, another person I had to put before myself? No thanks. But still, when she smiled at me, I smiled back. I didn't even know if I was ready, but for the first time, I felt ready. Not to rush into anything, not to replace Jessica, but just to be open to something new. Mark noticed and nudged me. "Dude, she's into you." I chuckled, shaking my head. "Not looking for anything." "Who said you had to be? Just go talk to her." I hesitated. Old habits die hard, and my first instinct was to think, what would Jessica say? But then I reminded myself, Jessica was gone. What she thought, what she would have wanted, didn't matter anymore. So I drained the rest of my beer, set it down, and stood up. All right. Let's see what happens. And damn, it felt good to just do something for me for once. I should have known it wasn't over. A few weeks after Jessica had finally disappeared from my life, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. "Hello." Silence. Then a shaky breath. "Ted." "Jessica." I pulled the phone away from my ear for a second, debating whether to hang up. But curiosity got the better of me. What do you want? She sniffled. She hesitated, like she didn't know where to start. I don't know who else to talk to. I sighed, rubbing a hand down my face. Jessica, I'm not your husband anymore. I'm not the guy you come to when things fall apart. I know, she whispered. But can I just say one thing? I didn't answer, but she took my silence as permission. I was wrong, she said, voice breaking. I ruined everything, and I don't even know why. I had everything, Ted. You, our life, everything we built. And I threw it away, and I don't even have a reason. I keep thinking back, trying to figure out why I did it, and I can't. I destroyed my own life. For a second, I almost felt bad for her. Almost. But then I remembered all the times I had begged her to talk to me, to tell me what was wrong, to let me in. And every time, she had shut me out. She had chosen this. I don't know what you want me to say, Jessica, I said finally. She let out a small bitter laugh. I don't either. I guess I wanted to say I'm sorry. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. I know. Silence. Then, almost too quiet to hear, she asked, "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" I thought about that for a long moment. Would I? Maybe one day. But not for her, for me. But I didn't owe her that answer. So I just said, "Goodbye, Jessica." And then I hung up. For the first time since this whole thing started, I felt completely free. After I hung up on Jessica, I just sat there, staring at my phone. It felt surreal. That was it. The last words, the last conversation, the last thread tying me to her. I expected to feel something, anger, sadness, maybe even relief. But I didn't feel anything at all. Jessica had been my world for so long that it was strange to realize she wasn't even a part of it anymore. She was just a name, a mistake in my past. And for the first time, I truly accepted that I didn't need to carry her with me anymore. That night, I did something I had been putting off for weeks. I went back to our house. Or I guess my house now. Jessica had already moved out, but I hadn't stepped foot inside since she left. Every time I thought about it, I convinced myself I was too busy or too tired. But deep down, I knew the real reason. I didn't want to face it. But I was done avoiding things. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, half expecting the house to feel different. But no. It was still the same walls, the same floors, the same air. But without her? It didn't feel heavy anymore. It didn't feel like a reminder of betrayal. It just felt like a house. I walked through every room, taking it all in. The living room where we had spent so many nights watching movies. The kitchen where I used to cook for her after long shifts. The bedroom where we had once made promises we both thought would last forever. But instead of hurting, all I could think was, this is mine now. This space, this life. It's mine to rebuild. So I did. The next morning, I started clearing things out. Anything that reminded me of Jessica? Gone. The fancy decorations she picked out that I never cared for? Trashed. The gifts she gave me that I held onto out of habit? Donated. It felt good, no, it felt amazing, to take control of my own space again. Every time I threw something of hers into a box, it felt like I was erasing the last traces of her from my life. By the end of the week, the house looked different. It felt different. It was no longer the home we had built together. It was mine. A few months passed, and life moved on. It's funny how things that once felt impossible to survive become nothing more than distant memories. I kept working, kept building myself back up. I spent time with friends. I started taking care of myself in ways I hadn't before. I picked up old hobbies, found new ones, and slowly but surely, I remembered what it felt like to just live without the weight of someone else's problems crushing me. One day, I ran into Sarah at a coffee shop. She looked surprised to see me, but then smiled. "You look happy," she said. I thought about that for a second. Then I smiled back. "Yeah, I think I am." She hesitated for a moment before asking, "Have you heard from Jessica?" I hadn't. Not since that last phone call. And honestly, I didn't care to. "No," I said simply. Sarah nodded, looking thoughtful. She's She's not doing great. I think she finally realized she burned every bridge she had. I didn't ask for details. Jessica wasn't my problem anymore. Whatever she was going through, she brought it on herself. Instead, I just took a sip of my coffee and said, "That's not my concern." Sarah studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Good. I'm glad you're not letting her pull you back in." "I never will," I assured her. And I meant it. It wasn't long before I realized I was truly free. Not just legally, not just physically, but mentally. The weight of everything, Jessica, the betrayal, the lies, was no longer something I carried with me. It had all become part of my past, just a story that no longer had the power to control me. For the first time in my life, I started thinking about my future. Not our future. Not what Jessica wanted. Not what I sacrificed for. Just me. I caught myself sitting in my garage one night, looking at my old beat-up truck, thinking about all the places I had always wanted to see but never did. I had spent so much of my life making sure someone else had everything they needed that I had never stopped to think about what I wanted. And for the first time in years, I wasn't tied down. No obligations, no person waiting at home, no reason to stay in the same routine. So, I made a decision. I sold the house. At first, it felt drastic. That house was supposed to be the home we built together, the place where we'd start a family, grow old, live the life we had planned. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, that was never my dream. That was hers. I didn't need a house filled with memories of a life that was already dead. I didn't need to be surrounded by walls that had once trapped me in a failing marriage. I needed a fresh start. So I listed it. It sold faster than I expected, and before I knew it, I was standing in an empty house, looking at the bare walls one last time. I thought I might feel something, sadness, nostalgia, maybe even regret. But all I felt was peace. I packed my things into my truck, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't have a set destination. No plan, no schedule, no expectations. Just the road ahead of me. Alaska? Maybe. The South? Could be interesting. A cross-country drive with no real timeline? Now that sounded like freedom. I hit the road, windows down, music blasting, feeling lighter than I had in years. I wasn't running away. I wasn't trying to escape anything. I was finally living for myself. Somewhere along the way, somewhere between the long stretches of highway and the quiet stops in towns I had never heard of, it hit me. Jessica's betrayal wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to me. It was the best thing. Because if she hadn't cheated, I would have spent the rest of my life living for someone else. I would have wasted years trying to fix a marriage that was already broken, trying to love a woman who had stopped loving me long before she admitted it. But now, I had a clean slate. A life that was mine. And as I drove toward whatever came next, I realized I wasn't scared. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was free. And for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I was supposed to be.